Kendall. Let's see, I want to do present here for a second. Okay. So Nick and I wanted to talk just a little bit today about 3 remote educational programs that we've developed and how we've done that by way of thinking about what the values of our institution are. So just to maybe give a little bit of background, Fisk Planetarium is a relatively large planetarium of about 200 seats. We're located on the University of Colorado Boulder campus. And normally on a week-to-week basis, we have a wide range of different types of programs, from educational programs to music shows to live interactive plays. And John Keller will be talking more about one of our live plays at the end of today. And we do other types of experimental programs. Let's see, but we had the question as did everybody else when coronavirus hit. What do we do now? And the question we really turned to is, how do we capture sort of the essence of what Fisk is and translate that to a digital space? So we turn to some of our values, one of which is that we are student operated. We actually, on a semesterly basis, employ about 35 undergraduate students. And they're awesome and amazing and really great to work with. They basically run our planetarium, everything from the box office to ushering to running our planetarium shows. They help Thor up in production and graphic design. And so we really felt like we wanted to keep holding on to our student operated value. As with many of you here, we value interactivity. So most of our shows have a live navigator and presenter to run live portions of the show. That includes allowing answering questions and flying people to places in the universe that they request. And we have very different audiences we serve about 17,000 K-12 students per year, but we also serve college classes that come in multiple times per semester, and then general public audiences ranging all the way from kind of intro level learners all the way up to more advanced astronomy learners. So with those in mind, we developed these 3 different virtual programs for our education side of Fisk. Domed Home and Virtual Fisk are sort of virtual planetarium shows similar to what many of you are doing out there. And then we also experimented with creating a podcast. So our Domed Home was kind of our main focus. It started in the spring, and we offered 3 different shows per week, one for K through 5th graders, one for 6th through 12th graders, and then one for the general public. And this was definitely geared towards kind of intro, intermediate level learners. In the summer, we transitioned to focusing on shows for families and their kids at home. And so we also offered suggestions for activities or other resources that kids could do with their parents at home that were related to the themes of each of these shows. Each of our shows were operated by students and were hosted live and interactive on our YouTube channel. And then because it was on YouTube, there was the live component, but then they stayed as recorded videos that could be watched after the fact. And we find that quite a few people actually go back and watch them after the fact or share them with other people that they know. So here's a sense of what it looks like. On the left, we have our live visuals that were running by a navigator. The presenter and navigator present for about 30 minutes on average, and then they answer questions real time. And the questions are coming in via the chat box over here on the right. As some of you have found, it definitely helps to have even a 3rd person behind the scenes as a question master who can be really watching that chat, moderating it, keeping it on track, and then helping feed questions to the presenting team. So here's a clip that we took from kind of the Q&A Q&A portion of that. Let's see if we can get this video to play.
I do see a question in the chat. That would be from Billy Bob Joe. And the question is, what was the first picture that Hubble took? So here's an interesting story about Hubble. When it first went up there and tried to take a picture, it was just a smudgy black and white picture of stars. Hubble was all smudgy and it didn't work how it was supposed to, which was pretty unfortunate to send up such an amazing telescope and find out that it wasn't taking good pictures. So they ended up having to do a service mission, and they basically gave Hubble glasses so that it could see better. And we got some much better pictures after fixing it.
Here's the same picture twice of that blurry image of a star cluster. It just doesn't look very good, does it?
Yeah, you might remember the way the star clusters looked before.
Here's a galaxy.
Yeah.
Well, let's try to compare that to what it should look like. Much better. So once they fix that problem, then Hubble could actually take some really good pictures, like the ones it's taking now.
So actually the progenitor of our Dome to Home program was really virtual Fisk. And this was a very similar setup, but really built to serve the undergraduate classes that we were still hosting in the spring and to try to help support the professors that had those classes that were continuing. So Nick right away developed this as soon as we went virtual. And instead of the presenter, we have, or I guess in place of one of our presenters, we have the professor of the class. We still have a navigator in the background running the visuals live. In this case, it was Nick running them live, but we are transitioning to having more of our students run those. And also in the fall will be, so these are currently sort of live or pre-recorded depending on what the professor, how they want to use it for their class. But I think we'll be moving more in the direction of live in the fall and potentially incorporating things like clicker questions or discussion questions to try to increase the interactivity there. And the podcast was definitely a sort of a very new experience for us. So in normal times, Fisk hosts quite a few faculty and graduate student talks that serve the general public at that kind of more intermediate to advanced learner level. And so we started the podcast. It's weekly, and it actually started as an idea from one of our students, and we jumped all in, and now it's directed and produced and run by a team of 3 of our students and recently graduated students. And each week they interview 2 researchers, a graduate level researcher, as well as a more established faculty member, about their research. And these have been really fun way to kind of share this kind of level of astronomy information, as well as maintain connection with the research side of the university. So these are now available on many of the places you would get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. So overall, it's been really fun. We've been focusing a lot on Dome to Home, as I mentioned, but in the fall, we'll be continuing all 3 of these, trying to make small changes. Particularly with Dome to Home, we'll be working with teacher groups to see how we can adjust our show so that we can better serve the K-12 population. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Yeah, I first want to ask, have any of you actually seen or tuned into any of these programs before, specifically like Dome to Home? Maybe raise your hand if you have, or react in the comments. It's just interesting for us to see that it's interesting. We've gotten people from all over the country who have signed in, and we're not sure how they heard of our program, considering that we're trying to target our typical audiences in Boulder and Denver first. But for those of you who are wondering how they actually work, I'm really surprised, and I have to admit I'm a little bit proud of myself for actually getting this to work, considering that we had to start working remotely. So what I'm going to sort of walk you through is how we got it working. And during this time, I had just finished up the Voyagers play with our team, and it was so we were really burned out from trying to, expecting a big play to be premiered, and the day that we went into quarantine was the day it was supposed to premiere. And so I immediately went on a short break, and then figured out, well, we still need to do something virtually, so we need to connect multiple people with our dome view and present it to YouTube. We figured that we could use YouTube or Twitch or Mixer. Mixer is now gone. Twitch felt too informal, so we went with YouTube. And so to do that, we said, well, we'll connect multiple people with Zoom, Google Meet, Skype. We need to have at least 2 of those 3, and you'll see why. With the dome view, so we use Digital Sky 2, and we have to send that through Google Meet, because otherwise, in order to capture the face of the presenters, you need to have a pretty large view of them through one of the other programs like Zoom. So we need to use 2 at the same time. And then we package it using OBS, as you learned yesterday, and present it to YouTube. So the way that works is that we have the navigator at their home computer, who then connects to the planetarium computer that has DS2 on it. And then they have Zoom and Google Meet that they're connecting through in order to connect Digital Sky 2 and their face to that computer. This would be all you need to do in order to have a single presenter, but or just a navigator. But once you have the, let's see if I can control this computer. There we go. Once you have the presenter in there, you need to actually connect the presenter. So now this is a perfect little training loop. Digital Sky 2, along with the faces, everybody can interact with each other. But you can instead send that to OBS, package it up, and send it on to YouTube. And YouTube then distributes it to the viewers, and the viewers can then respond and chat to us through YouTube chat. And so this creates a feedback loop that would sort of complete the ESRU cycle, where we can actually use the sort of feedback that our students give us. And if we ask them a question and then they respond, and then we can actually, if we say, what's your favorite planet? They say Pluto. We can then go to Pluto. We can ask them, what do you know about Pluto? And we also tell them Pluto's not a planet. But that's how this whole loop works, and I'll incorporate the full layout here with the Digital Sky 2 going over Google Meet to the presenter navigator's computer. We found that that is a much faster, much lower latency than actually doing it through remote desktop connection. So we'll ask, how can you translate your values into doing something like this? With your planetarium in quarantine, how can you, how can you capture your essence to your typical audiences, even if they can't show up in the droves they used to? Yes, anyone can join the live chat so long as they have a YouTube account.
So Brianna and Nick, this is John Armstrong from the Planetarium. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the initiative to just do this during COVID-19, because that's amazing that you took all that on, just because there was a lot of other things going on. So I really appreciate that, especially from your faculty. The question I have is, what's the delay time with the YouTube chat? Because we've been trying this through Facebook Live, and the delay is like 5 or 6 minutes before you see responses, which I don't know if that's my problem because I'm trying to do this from home, or what the deal is. So with the YouTube chat, is it pretty much like right on?
Yeah, actually YouTube, with ultra low latency, you can get it down to 2 seconds of response time. And if you go with like a lot of latency, I think it's up to like maybe a few minutes. But with ultra low latency, it's there are sometimes, infrequently, some problems where it just like the thing freezes for a second.
Yeah, we have had latency up to like 20 to 30 seconds sometimes. And so that does certainly pose a challenge. That's where sometimes our question master comes into play. So even though they are feeding the questions to the presenter in sort of a timely manner, if the presenter has already moved on to something else, so the chat moderator is paying attention to the YouTube cadence, and if the presenter has already moved on, either the chat moderator will answer in the chat box, or say, oh, we'll come back to your question at a later time, and kind of help with that latency issue.
Well, and I really like the idea of you having the presenter and the navigator, because seeing 2 people interacting on a Zoom seems to encourage more people to interact through the chat. I even noticed this yesterday when we did an activity here, like as soon as you had 2 people asking each other questions, it just exploded. So
yeah, we'll actually be incorporating that into a series of modules that we'll be creating with our astronomy department for the fall learning experience. So we're going to try to really encourage our professors to do that and to be recording them over the next few months and releasing that online. So hopefully at the next WAC, I have something to share with you then.
Well, Nick and Brianna, thank you so much. I hate to cut you off. I know
Thank you.
Thank you.
there's a lot of people